Welcome, everyone. We're going to start with a question for you to ponder, maybe this entire time, whether you're listening to us or not.
What does that mean if they're not listening to us?
I mean, you get distracted and you think about other things.
Not while you're listening to this podcast. Are you kidding me?
I definitely would. Anyway, who are you?
What is your identity?
We are Red Weather Christians.
I'm Jen.
I'm Steve. We're here working through what drives, motivates, and inspires us to act.
Whether it's a career, a religion, a family, our identity, does it even make us happy?
Some of you have probably already searched for this answer at some point, maybe in college or...
Google. Who am I, Google?
Right, they will give you answers, but through personality tests.
I remember taking Myers-Briggs way back. I want to say high school, and then maybe again in college, or maybe just college. I don't know. But I remember my results. ENTJ, extrovert, intuition, thinking, and judgment.
Or judging.
Yes, that's right. Although I like the sound of judgment.
I took it in college, and this ever-popular Myers-Briggs, I'm pretty sure gave me 50-50 on either extrovert or introvert. They'd said I could choose.
You just get to choose.
Which I think that's what I did throughout the whole questionnaire. Anyway, I was probably sensing, but I could see my younger college self picking intuition. Definitely thinking and definitely perceiving at that time in my life.
Oh, in college? Yeah, perceiving prefers to live life in a spontaneous and adaptable way, enjoys keeping options open. And that was definitely college Steve. College Jen prefers to live life in a planned and organized manner, enjoys coming to closure and making a decision.
Yeah, that was annoying. Wait, what? I meant...
Well, you chose me, so that's your bad.
Yeah, except you chose to enjoy the spontaneity that I brought to your planned, organized life.
Yeah, well, I think that's sometimes the beautiful thing about a couple, is that you balance each other out. You needed my planned and organized personality. Anyway.
There have been many other personality tests along the way. If you're not familiar with them, pop psychology loves to make new ones. Maybe you've heard of the otter, lion, golden retriever, whatever that one was.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
You definitely do, because we did it at St. John's.
No, I just remember doing some really weird one at our Christian school that we taught at back in Battle Creek.
Don't stomp on my flag.
Something about a flag, and you have different aspects of your personality on a flag, and then you color your flag, and
it was pretty cool.
Then you set the flag down on the ground, and you chant, "Don't stomp on my flag."
I don't think that's exactly how it worked.
That's how it's living in my memory.
That's the idea. Another test you might have taken or read a lot about is the Enneagram. I may have already expressed my feelings on that. However, that's just another way that we may have tested ourselves to see what we are like.
The bottom line is, humans seem to have a natural urge to search for our own identity. We want to know who we are. And if we can take a questionnaire that tells us who we are, bring it on. And yes, on today's episode, we are talking all about identity and why it is that urge inside of us to figure out who we are. Is it healthy? Do we need it? Do we need to understand who we are to be happy? All these fun questions.
Yes, but we, of course, want to remind our listeners that this is not an end-all discussion about who we were, who we are, or who we can be.
We like to talk about change on this podcast, and we know it's really important for us all.
So let's start with a simple, small talk type of question that you get.
Okay.
Hey, Jen.
Hey, Steve.
So what do you do?
Ah, yes. I have found myself asking this question at parties myself because it's just that natural first question. And it can put you in an awkward position because what if you don't do anything in the traditional sense. Like, you don't have a traditional job. Because that's pretty much what the question is, right? Like, what do you do for a living? How do you make money?
Or if you're not making money, what do you do with your time?
Yeah, but I think most people just want to know, how are you making your money?
How are you surviving?
Right. And I think what, Steve, you're getting at is that maybe perchance that is how we identify ourselves and others, like kind of first off.
Absolutely. I mean, if someone were to ask us, what do we do? Well, although Jen is not currently teaching, and I am, we usually respond with, well, I'm a teacher.
Well, that would be the answer, I think, that they were looking for. Yeah. What is your profession?
Yes, but my profession doesn't actually make the money that I live on.
True.
So we want to look at how a job defines us, and if it should define us at all.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe the next time I'm at a party and mingling, because, wow, I love doing that, I will just start off the bat by asking someone, so who are you? Really?
Well, the idea there is, yes, that's what we're getting at. Like, we want to have these maybe superficial questions to ask about the person and find out who they are.
Yeah. Because normally it's a pretty easy question to answer, and then it can lead into like, oh, what an interesting job you do. Tell me more about it.
Or, as that might seem forced, you just stop asking about that uninteresting job.
Big gulps, eh?
Yes.
Well, see you later.
And we talked a little bit about this in our passion episode, that our passion often defines who we are, which happens to overlap, or people think it should overlap, with their career or occupation.
Right. When Steve and I were first married and we were teaching and then we stopped teaching and I was just working random jobs, I felt a little bit like I was having an identity crisis. I was like, who am I? Oh my goodness, I'm not a teacher. What is this?
Yeah, and if you want a humorous approach to what it's like to be a teacher or what a teacher makes, you are welcome to go see Taylor Molly's, what do you call it, Jen?
It's a poem.
I know, but you call it like a
spoken word
there
poem.
It is. Spoken word poetry. That's what I was looking for. Thanks. It's fantastic.
Moving on.
So some other things. I like to go to this small talk, this party atmosphere, and they ask, where are you from? So Jen, where are you from?
That's another difficult one for me to answer because what are they asking? Like where you just previously lived or where you were born and raised? Because I was born and raised in California, but then I lived a few years in Michigan, and then I lived several years in Florida, and now I live in Ecuador. So what do you want?
Exactly. We want identity from this question. And how we answer it usually reflects what we care most about. So when people say, where are you from? And we say, well, most recently, Florida, that's because it was us together. But if Jen answers this question and says the Bay Area, she's identifying a person that is someone I never really knew. I never knew her as a person who lived in the Bay Area. I knew her as, we're both at the same college. Then we're both living together in the same city, in the same house. How do you answer that question? And so there is an aspect of our identity that's also from whence you came. And as Jen was saying, it's complicated often. And at what point do you live somewhere long enough where you think, I'm from here?
Yeah, home is a strange concept to us these days. We feel like our home is here in Quito, Ecuador, because this is where we live right now. And this is where we have our friends that we hang out with right now. This is where we do our grocery shopping. That's the indicator, really, of where home is, right? But as far as, like, if I were to go back for my identity, yeah, I think a big part of my identity does stem from being raised in the Bay Area of California.
Right, and if we go back to living in the States, I don't think when we get there, we're going to answer this question as, oh, we're from Quito, Ecuador, because we weren't born and raised here. But I wonder what our kids would say.
Yeah, that's a good question. I have no idea.
So again, we're delving into this maybe small talk conversation of this identity crisis we might face when these questions arise. And Jen, let's not forget that you might not even have these questions at all at a party.
Yeah, like I'm standing off to the side, avoiding small talk at all costs.
Well, no, I mean, you might avoid people just based on the identity they present themselves with.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, I try not to be judgmental in life, but I can be.
Right, and if I see someone wearing any sort of Packers paraphernalia,
Oh, that's a win.
right, win. I instantly have a connection. We could talk about something as long as they actually care about the Packers. Done.
Yeah, that's happened to you numerous times. And it's always kind of awkward because through the years, you've gotten me a couple of different Green Bay Packer shirts and stuff. And every now and then I'll wear one out and someone will be like, go Pack, or whatever they say. I don't know.
Go Pack, go.
Okay. And I'll be like, okay, you talking to me? Huh?
Yeah, but that physical appearance, that physical identity we present ourselves with is a factor in if you even talk to people.
Every morning when you decide what clothes you're going to put on, you are affecting your identity, people.
And yet we don't want to read too much into physical identity as our personal identity.
Next up is the question of religion and how we oftentimes place our identity in the religion we follow.
And when we tell someone the religion that we are a part of, that gives off a lot of different connotations for them as to what we're saying and how we're responding. So, Jen, what religion are you?
Yeah, that's a kind of tough question. I would consider myself a Christian, but I think I would have to qualify Christianity with what it is that I actually follow, especially during these tumultuous times where you hear that someone is a Christian and then you kind of assume a lot of things about that person politically. And I think that's probably what I would have to take a little bit of time and just have a discussion with someone about what my being a Christian actually means.
Right. And we're also looking at, when you answer this, even if you come from a very similar faith tradition, as in, let's say you believe Jesus lived and died and was raised from the dead. That encompasses many religions still, or at least in people's perspectives it does. So you're looking at Christian, evangelical Christian, which might be something different, Catholics, Mormons, any of that like Christian tree of religion.
I think all of this kind of reinforces a point that we make often on this podcast, and it is to have conversations with people. So when people give you a one-word answer, maybe probe a little bit, talk about it, ask questions, be interested, and get to know people on a deeper level. I know that if someone were to say, I don't know, like what political affiliation they're with, I would have assumptions about that person right off the bat. But what I need to make sure to do in my life is to get to know that person and talk to that person face to face and ask them other questions about politics, but also about their life.
Right. And as you mentioned politics, if someone were to ask us what political affiliation we would have, sometimes you have to fill it out to be able to vote in a primary or something. But for us, I would say none. I'm not affiliated with either of the major parties in the United States. I dislike them both probably equally, maybe one more than the other right now, but I hope for the best still.
Here's the bottom line. We love to put ourselves and other people into boxes. And one of the things that we wanted to do on this episode is talk about why that is. Why do we want to figure out which exact boxes we fit into and what the other boxes are that other people are fitting into? Why is this such an obsession?
Right. And you were reading a book the other month or so, maybe 3 months ago.
I read a lot of books.
Well, it was like something about making people others.
Othering. Yes. This is from a book called A Future Without Walls, Confronting Our Divisions by T. Richard Snyder. I loved it. It says, A Future Without Walls offers a comprehensive and complex analysis of othering while unveiling the connections between our divisions and the roots, forms, and consequences of the walls that have been erected. It also offers concrete steps forward to help us dismantle these walls. This is the book, I've mentioned it before in another episode, where it talks about the importance of being face-to-face with people.
Right. So this is what you were mentioning about putting people in boxes or putting ourselves in boxes. And then there are other people not in those boxes or in other boxes. So another way we identify people is we might say something, oh, so do you have a family, Jen?
Or do you have brothers and sisters?
Or do you have kids?
Are you married?
And we ask these familial relationships. The answer is most definitely everyone has some sort of family somewhere, whether they know about them or not.
Yeah, we need a sperm and an egg here, people.
So you're alive for some reason. But that's what makes the family identity different. It takes other people to make your family and your identity of what family means.
Yeah, as I was kind of brainstorming for this episode, I found myself realizing that a lot of elements of our identity stem from other people. And that was kind of weird to me, but this one is a good example of that. Like, if I am a wife, it's because I have a husband. It's because of that other person that I have the identity of wife. If I'm a mother, it's because I have kids. It's because of those kids, those other people that I can identify as a mother.
And yet you are not a sister to anyone.
Sadly, no.
And so these relationships give us some identity, but it's not ours. It's only because of other people in our lives. And that's important to remember about us.
I will just jump in and say this. When people learn that I'm an only child, sometimes it happens after they've made an only child joke. And then, because I'm not shy normally, I'll say, I'm an only child. And they'll be like, oh, well, not you. But I get it. We have assumptions about only children.
Are you referencing when I called you out for being an only child?
We talked about that already. You jerk. Yeah, all that to say, yes, I'm an only child. Yes, people make assumptions about me because of that. And what can I do? Just keep on being me, I guess.
And then sometimes family can be painful for your identity. If you don't have what everyone else has in their family, or your family is gone. Like, how do you feel, Jen, when people ask about your parents?
I finally, at this point in my life, can answer without crying, which is a good step for me. Not that there's anything wrong with crying or grieving. It takes on all shapes and forms and comes in waves. But I answer that question to people and say, I actually lost both of my parents to cancer. And really, all it does is make it awkward for the other person. They're like, oh, I'm so sorry. New subject.
Right. And all of that to say, we shouldn't be ashamed of our identity if that's what it is now.
Yeah, I'm not ashamed.
Sorry. We shouldn't have to shy away from our identity, is what I'm saying.
Just so that other people don't feel awkward.
Right. What's wrong with awkward?
I like a little awkwardness in my life.
So moving on, when we talked about the boxes we put ourselves in or other people in, we often use descriptive words. Let's talk about one about us. At one point, someone told you, Jen, that you are a crunchy mom. What does that mean?
At the time, this was pre-COVID, just to clarify, because I think the word has a different meaning now with vaccines and everything like that. But at the time, it meant you make your own baby food, maybe you cloth diaper, you try to buy organic, and you're super health conscious. Maybe you don't get all the vaccines, or not that I didn't do the vaccines for my kids, but I spaced them out. And so because of that, I think people thought I was kind of crunchy because I just, didn't want my baby to get 5 shots at one doctor's visit.
Yeah, and that might not even be all the description that the crunchy word represents.
Oh, and baby wearing. Let's not forget. Don't you dare put your baby in a stroller because you're going to ruin their lives.
Okay, now it got real. But we have other descriptive words which we sometimes throw around flippantly. One of which that gets thrown around is the word racist. Nobody, and I mean nobody, wants to identify themselves as racist.
I don't know. I think there are some weirdos out there. But I agree with you to the extent of that is probably not a word most people would choose as an identifier of themselves.
Even if it was their most telling identifier, they don't use that. Why not? Because what we do with these descriptive words that we identify with is we change them. We change their meaning. I'm not racist. I don't hate black people.
Oh my gosh. Or the ever popular, I have black friends.
I can count them. Wow. That is so short-sighted for what that word is representing, or should represent. Not that we are in a good position to talk about this being given our white privilege, but if I say I'm not racist because I define what racist is,
Not good enough.
yeah, that's not good enough.
Yeah.
Likewise, I know that there are people out there who think I'm not a Christian, even if I identify as a Christian because I'm not good enough.
Yeah, and it is funny when you start looking at all these descriptors that we might write down about ourselves that are not just straight factual, I guess. Like, I am a wife, I have a wedding certificate. You realize that everybody has their own definition of the term.
Then how do we fit into any of those boxes?
And again, we always seem to go back to this, the complexity of being a human. And that's why we can't just grab a bunch of boxes and shove people in them, because we have more going on than descriptors.
So if you look at the Myers-Briggs test, there are 16 outcomes of who you can be and your identity.
Yeah, and when you say it that way, it's 100% ridiculous to fit into like a potential of 16. And really, you only get 4 out of those 16. It's like, these are your 4, and that's what you are. That's who you are.
Right. So 7 billion people in the world, 16 types of people.
Yeah. Well, it's 16 combinations, right, of the 4. Yeah.
Those are different personality types.
Right.
And that's all you'll ever meet.
It's absurd. It's absurd. I think we can say that's absurd without offending anyone, and saying that all these personality types are absurd in the sense that you have to take them with a grain of salt. It's like reading a horoscope a little bit. You're like, yeah, there are elements that are like me, but you realize that you are unlike anyone else on this planet. And this is maybe where my Christianity comes in to play, is that I do believe that God created us and that we are all unique individuals. Someone once told me that something they like to do is every now and then just glance down at their fingertips and just remember that they are unique. Nobody else has your fingerprints. And I just thought that was kind of a neat visual.
Talking about Christianity, there's one part in the Bible that gets reiterated a lot. I have probably heard 53 sermons on this, give or take. So Matthew 28:19. It is the Great Commission. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. When we talk about identifying as a Christian, sometimes we bring this up and we ask each other, well, how are you making disciples? My question has always been, on this passage, why do you ignore the first 2 words? The first 2 words are, therefore, go. Why are you still where you're at if you were told to go somewhere? When we identify disciple making, we see it as pastoring or small group studies or something what I would consider maybe trite.
I think people interpret go differently than you, Stephen, and that they interpret it as like, go out into your community, go into your church, go talk to your neighbors, go that kind of go. Not go as in go to another city, to another country.
Even though it mentions make disciples of all nations, it's almost as if we expect all these other nations to come and be made disciples as opposed to us going.
Yeah, but I don't really know if we want to open this can of worms, but there's a whole other issue of Christians taking that literally and going to other nations with this like white savior complex and coming in and thinking, I'm going to change this community for the better because I'm going to introduce them to Christ when the community already has their religion that's working well for them. They have their traditions, all of that. And then we come stomping in thinking, well, we know a better way for you. We don't know you at all, but we know how you should be living. And we kind of come in and try to force that onto other people. And we don't like that.
No, and that's where identity within Christianity is up for debate or can change. And we want to bring that full circle to all different ways that you might identify yourself and be like, wait a second, for half my life, over half my life so far, I was not a husband. I now identify as that, but I wasn't. What happens to our identity when things change?
Or when we interpret things differently. Like someone interprets that verse, Matthew 28:19, as you need to go to people, share the gospel with them, and say the sinner's prayer with them, and then bring them to your church and baptize them. And I don't interpret the verse in that way. What does it even mean to make disciples?
And if you were to make a disciple, do you want to erase the identity they had before you made them a disciple of Christ? No, you take them with whatever they had before.
Yes, but Christians would argue that they are born again. So in a way, their old identity is gone.
And they have a new identity in Christ.
Exactly.
And again, we ask that question of, is that okay? Is it okay if your identity changes? And would it mean an identity crisis if you can't figure out where it is right now?
I think that's one compelling element of religion, is that you don't feel like you have to shoulder the burden of figuring out your identity if you're saying that your identity is in a God, a divine, supernatural being. It kind of gives you an out, I think, a little bit.
Definitely.
I know Christians listening are not going to like that I said that. But God would want us to see how I made myself a Christian again by saying that. See what I did there? I do think that God wants us to introspect and ask ourselves, who are we?
And yet, I don't think you have to be someone and have the answer, that you can exist with or without an identity.
Or maybe realize that the ways we identify ourselves oftentimes are boxes, and that we are more complex than a box. So while I do think it is important to introspect and ask ourselves who we really are, understanding also that the answer might not lie in 7 descriptors you come up with for yourself. That's nice, but just giving ourselves grace to know that we are much, much more than that.
We are Red Weather Christians.
I'm Jen.
And I'm Steve. We hope you'll feel empowered, question the rules you follow,
Fear mediocrity,
and keep the conversation going.